U.S. Department of Energy's Oak Ridge Reservation is the site of a vital national defense facility and a modern computational and scientific center. But over the years, parts of the reservation have been contaminated with radioactive and other hazardous waste. DOE has been busy cleaning up those affected areas, but much remains to be done. Citizen input is a valuable part of that effort, and DOE welcomes advice from the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup of the Oak Ridge Reservation. The board provides input on a wide range of environmental cleanup operations underway at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, Y-12 National Security Complex, and the East Tennessee Technology Park. You can be part of this important work by attending the monthly meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board. For more information, call or visit our website.
Everybody, let's go ahead and get started. A couple of housekeeping items up front. Please mute or turn off your cell phone. And of course, in case of emergency, exits through the front or here to the secondary door. Announcements for this week. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, November the 14th, and the presentation will be on ongoing efforts to assure sufficient waste disposal capacity. That presentation will be given by Brian Henry. And our issue group members are Allen, Burrows, Holden, Perez, Pitchers, Shields, Shoemaker, Swindler, Tappan, Trujillo. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Miss Melissa when she comes back to do the presentation of awards.
So tonight, we wanted to present some awards to two of our outgoing members who have taken other positions. I'd like to start with Christopher Beatty, if you'd come up. Christopher is a quality assurance engineer with Innovative Design Incorporated, which provides support for U.S. International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor Project at ORNL. He has served as a senior systems engineer on the project. Christopher served one term on the board. He was very interested in groundwater, excess contaminated facilities, and waste disposal capacity issues. But Chris has taken on additional responsibilities in his career and has also recently elected president of the 100 Black Men of Greater Knoxville chapter. Congratulations on that. He's still interested in groundwater issues and would like to consider serving on the board again in the future. Christopher, we're really going to miss you. Thank you so much. Our next individual is Vanita Thomas. She served on the one term on the board from July 16 to June 18. She had to announce her departure in June. She is now a safety and health representative at Strategy, which is a firm that provides industrial hygiene and safety oversight for the demolition of K-25 building at ETDP. She'll be working at ETDP, but will also have duties with the biology complex. And because of this, she had a conflict of interest, so she was going to she's moving on with her career. So we appreciate, Vanita, all your help. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. And you're next, actually, with comments from our Deputy Designated Federal Officer as well.
And I don't have too much to start with, but what I would like to remind everybody, we've talked about this in several meetings. On October 18th, there is going to be another public meeting at the Y-12 New Hope Center from 6 to 8 o'clock discussing the new disposal facility. So, just if you've got that on your calendar, we'd like for you to attend. We will also be discussing that in November, that same topic. Also wanted to let everybody know we're started our new member process, so we're starting to look for new members. So if you have anybody you think would be interested, get them in contact with Shelley Kimmel, and she will get them out the applications. And speaking of new members, this is the first meeting that we've had with the camera since we've gotten our new members. So we'd like to take this time to introduce everybody so that everyone will know who our new members are. Our first person is Terry Allen. He is representing Anderson County. Mr. Allen is a retired general engineer who worked for the Department of Energy at EM. He's worked on issues related to regulatory compliance, safety culture, and a variety of other tasks related to environmental cleanup. Mr. Allen received his BS in chemical engineering and an MS in environmental engineering from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. He is a resident of Oak Ridge. So welcome, Terry. Next, we have Bill Clark. Mr. Clark is a retired Boilermaker with a wide range of experience both in his professional career and as the owner of a drilling rig, which provided firsthand insight into environmental issues. He's now a master beef producer. Mr. Clark graduated from the Tennessee College of Applied Technology with a certification in combination welding. Mr. Clark has an interest in environmental and county/city governmental issues. Mr. Clark is a resident of Oakdale, Tennessee. Welcome, Mr. Clark. Our next candidate is Sarah Eastburn. She's from Knox County. Ms. Eastburn is the Director of Marketing and Education Outreach for the Tennessee Clean Water Network, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation devoted to promoting clean water and healthy communities by fostering civic engagement, building partnerships, and advancing a sustainable water policy. She has previously worked as an educational fellow with the AmeriCorps, a media coordinator/language arts teacher, and an environmental developmental specialist. She earned a BA in Spanish Business and a BA in Mass Communications from the University of Wisconsin. And Ms. Eastburn has an interest in environmental health and public health issues. She is a resident of Knoxville, Tennessee. Welcome, Sarah. Our next candidate is Marite Perez. Ms. Perez is a loan officer with Mortgage Investors Group. She is a volunteer with the Centro Hispano of East Tennessee, which promotes empowerment and civic participation of multicultural communities through education and social services. Previously, she worked with Latin and Haitian communities in the Dominican Republic as the Community Economic Development Advisor through the Peace Corps. She has a BA in International Affairs and International Business from Florida State University and an MBA in Global Social Sustainability Enterprise from Colorado State University. Ms. Perez is a resident of Knoxville, Tennessee. Welcome. And our final candidate is Brooke Pitchers, and she's not here, so we will hold that till next time. So that's all I have. Thank you, Shell.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Next up, we have Connie Jones with EPA.
Thank you. I don't have any specific announcements, but I will attempt to answer questions if asked. Thank you.
And Mike Higgins with TDEC.
I don't have a lot on tonight's agenda, but related to the proposed landfill, in addition to the public meeting that will be held on the 18th, there's a public availability session at the TDEC office tomorrow night, the 11th. It'll start at 2 in the afternoon, run till 8 o'clock. It's just kind of a walkthrough session to provide information to the public concerning the new landfill. It was requested by the Sierra Club, and they will be hosting it at the TDEC facility.
Okay, thank you. Our presentation this evening is by Ben Williams on Oak Ridge Environmental Management Program Outreach. Belinda has a nice introduction for you, Ben, and then we'll hand you the floor.
The introduction. It was long in coming. Okay, so Ben Williams, it says, in October 2015, Ben Williams began serving as the interim Senior Communications Specialist for the Office of Technology Transitions for the Department of Energy. Prior to his detail in the office, he worked as a public affairs specialist with the U.S. Department of Energy's Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management in Oak Ridge. In this role, he performed a broad spectrum of communication services for the local office, including media interaction, community and stakeholder outreach, emergency communication, and event coordination. Specifically, he established the site's social media and web presence to enhance public interaction and understanding about Oak Ridge's environmental management program. He first joined the department in 2008. Then he since then he's worked within the agency's Office of Science and Office of Environmental Management. Most recently in 2014, he assisted the waste isolation pilot plant in Carlsbad, New Mexico as a recovery communications lead while employees identified the cause of 2 emergency events and began their path to resume operations. Ben holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from Mississippi State University and a master's degree in strategic public relations from George Washington University. Thank you, Ben.
I hear there's a recommendation about communication, so I'll try to do a really good job tonight before you get to the recommendation part. I'm Ben Williams. I'm a public affairs specialist with the Environmental Management Program, and really happy to join you tonight. I met with many of you, I want to say almost exactly a year ago, I think last September, to go over our outreach efforts. And so I'm happy to be back and happy to actually tell you how it's grown over the past year and some things I said we wanted to work on. We're actually working on those things and have some new material to show you. So first thing to really consider with communication and outreach is that we have lots of different audiences, lots of different interactions, and our different audiences have different needs, different requests. And it's also important to note that all the communication that happens, not all of it is seen by the public and by stakeholders. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but there's also a lot going out publicly as well. So I'm going to focus primarily on the public part with the media and the stakeholder and community outreach. And so speaking about the different needs we have, Congress needs are to know that we're an investment-worthy site. You might have heard that before, but we want to share news and information that really highlights that when Oak Ridge receives tax dollars, which Congress wants to know how we're using those, we communicate how we're doing it and how we're doing it well. And so really our job with Congress is to instill confidence in how we're spending the money they're giving us. So that's a constant communication. With headquarters, it's important to note that there are 17 environmental cleanup sites across the country. And so there's a pot of money for environmental cleanup. We want them to know that we're planning the work well, we're executing the work well, we're sequencing the work in the right way so that when they give Oak Ridge money, we can show them the progress and the accomplishments that we've made. With regulators, we want them to know that we're trying to make the best decisions to protect the community and the projects we do. Media is very interested in financial and economic impacts. Developments with projects, big contracts, that kind of thing is really a primary interest. And our stakeholders and community, there's so many different groups, it's really hard to say what exactly they need. We talk to a lot of different groups, and they're each kind of interested in some different things. So we obviously speak with SSAB. We have the Roane County Environmental Review Board. We have the Environmental Quality Advisory Board. We have the East Tennessee Economic Council, ATIBA, residents. We have other DOE programs, the Nuclear National Security Administration, which oversees Y-12, the Office of Science, which oversees Oak Ridge National Lab. So just lots of different groups that have different interests, and we try to treat each one specifically. So really, we break it into 2 groups. We have our external communication and our external audiences, and we have our internal communication and internal audiences. For the external, we have media and Congress, state, local officials, community groups, and residents. For our internal audiences, we have employees, both federal and contractor. We have about 75 to 80 federal contractors, and we have over 2,000 contractors that do environmental cleanup work in Oak Ridge. So it's not to be overlooked, and I'll get to that a little bit later. So the different mechanisms when we reach out to the media, if we have a big development, we really use press releases and media advisories that goes directly to newsrooms' inbox or reporters' inbox via email. So we'll push out if we have a big contract award or we completed a big project, that goes directly to the reporters in the newsrooms. If we want to really share our perspective on something. We'll submit editorials to newspapers. We'll do interviews with newspapers. And then to really raise awareness and try to attract more media attention, we have social media posts and blogs and newsletter stories that we kind of give them a taste of updates they might not have known existed, and then they will call me to follow up to get more information. We might get follow-up stories based on that. I mentioned the newsletter, and sometimes when people say, let's start a newsletter, I kind of roll my eyes. It's like everybody wants to start a newsletter. But this is a really good newsletter. I'd like to put in the pitch for it. If you haven't signed up for it, I think it's great. You just put in your email address and hit submit, and it's really easy to sign up for it. And it's really grown over the past several years. Last year when I talked to you, it had 60,000 subscribers. Now it has 90,000. So it's growing at a very big rate. Our employees are subscribed to it, contractors, lawmakers. It's all across the board, residents. And so it's a big audience. It's a great way to share our news and updates. It's now issued weekly. Last time I talked to you, it had just gone from being a monthly newsletter to every 2 weeks, and it grew. It had so much content that it's now issued weekly, and they have a rule, only new content. So we don't send recycled stuff, and we really try to stay away from fluff, and that's attracted a lot of media to follow the newsletter, and so we'll get follow-on media stories based on what's in the newsletter. We'll get questions come in based on stories in the newsletter. So this has been really a great publicity tool for Oak Ridge, and if you notice, we got good coverage. Oak Ridge is the #1 story that happened last month when Tosca came down. So we get high visibility from it. And with headquarters really pushing to try to make the newsletter the best it can be and be weekly, that's pushed us and the communications team locally to really push to find all the story opportunities we can. And so now we're pushing to have, usually we're in 3 out of every 4 if I had to average it, but we try to do every week to have something in this newsletter. A big part of our job is to not only develop, but to maintain our relationships with reporters. I think we've had a really good year this year. We've made some good connections in television. WBIR is the most watched local television station, and they've provided us some good coverage this year. They had a big story that covered the EM program as a whole in May. That's called sweeps season, so they try to get their biggest stories out. Back when your favorite TV shows are going through their finales, they try to really put the best stories to follow those season finales, so you're watching your show and then you would stay tuned to the news afterward. And so they played a story about us during sweeps that was very good at the beginning of summer, and then at the end of summer they actually came back to say, what progress have you made at ETTP since? And so they talked about Tosca and CNF and some other demolitions since. So we're able to highlight the progress we did. You also see a submission to the local Oak Ridger. That's a newspaper clipping right there that appeared a couple weeks ago. And then the Oak Ridge Today is a web-based news service that serves Oak Ridge, and we have we're well represented in that as well. So now rotating from media to local community groups, our leadership, I don't know how they do it. They stay super busy. We give briefings and presentations very regularly at all levels. We talk to local officials. We talk to local community groups. We talk to, every Friday, it's a meeting of kind of regional business leaders. It's called ETEC, and that's Friday mornings. We'll go and give updates to kind of the leaders in Oak Ridge on a pretty regularly. There's a national cleanup workshop, so all the different EM programs and contractors meet in DC every year, and we're able to highlight our success on a national level. So we talk at all levels of local, regional, national. They're really getting out there. We provide monthly updates here at the SSAB. I think this is a great forum. We have people that are interested in asking questions. It's open to the public, and we try to really get our project managers here. They're highlighting the good work going on. We have numerous tours from DOE employees across the complex, community groups, lawmakers. We're constantly doing tours to inform people, get eyes on the projects we're doing. It really helps for them to understand once they actually get out in the field and see what we're doing, see how complex our work is, and then also how fast we're moving with the cleanup. We also do public meetings and information sessions on topics that we believe are high interest. I can think of several that happened in the past year. We did a K-25 History Center walkthrough to give people a sneak peek of what that will look like when it opens next year. The Environmental Management Disposal Facility, we're in the public comment period for that. We've done 2 public information sessions, and then Melissa highlighted that we'll have a public meeting on the 18th for that, trying to really get the word out on that. We do the annual budget workshop, which SSAB is a big part of every year to talk about the funding we receive and our priorities moving forward. So we're trying to get out in the community as much as possible and to be transparent and to really keep people educated and aware of what's happening. I think we have a strong website. We always try to keep it current, well organized, and informative. We're writing an average of probably a story a week. So anytime you go on our website, it has a news feed, and there'll be an update on one of our projects or an aspect of our work. And so we really try to keep that fresh. The pictures are always changing because the stories are always changing. We don't want it to get stale. We want to really push people there. And so since we're doing so much content for the newsletter, it actually is located on our website. It goes, as soon as it goes to the newsletter, the next day it's on our website. So feeding the newsletter actually feeds our website, and it feeds our social media posts. So we're able to make the most of it. So our news archive, once we have a newsletter story, it doesn't go away. It goes to our news feed, and then if you click on our news page, it'll go to our archive. So you can, if you missed a story or you haven't checked our news in a while, you can go there and select the view all in that corner, and you can just scroll through its chronological order. It also has lots of offerings. We have fact sheets about all our major projects and all our major sites. We have publications. We have write-up on our leadership. We have contractor evaluations. Try to have everything possibly we can that the public might have interest in on our website. We have a very large and active social media presence. We have one of the largest in the entire EM complex. We have the biggest Facebook following of any site in the complex. We have, I believe, about 8,700 followers right now, which feels pretty good. We're still working on Twitter. We have about 1,900 on that. We're working to grow that audience. It's a little different needs and different people. We have Flickr, and that's a great place. If you want to just look for fun historical pictures of the city or historical operations, that's a great place. We also post current pictures, current projects, but we've received millions of views on our Flickr account. And on YouTube, last year I promised we're really trying to emphasize video a bit more. So this year I'm excited to show you one of those videos and highlight some other videos we've worked on. That's the way people prefer to receive information now, so we're really trying to adapt and to meet the audiences where they prefer to be. So this is our YouTube channel at the bottom of the page. If you want to look at that later, that would be great. But all the videos you see right now are new since the last time I talked to you. And they're all major projects that I think provide really great overviews. And at the end of the presentation tonight, I'm going to show you one of them that highlights Excess Contaminated Facilities Initiative. So we really try to stay high level, make it understandable for people, but also show the impact and value that EM is bringing Oak Ridge and the different sites. But you can see we have Y12 mercury treatment facility updates, progress updates from ETTP, Environmental Management Disposal Facility overview, transuranic waste, K-25 History Center. So it's just a mix of all our different projects going on right now. And each one of these receives thousands of views because we share it on our social media accounts, which have pretty large followings, and then they get shared. And so we're able to get very high visibility on these. We do have, we try not to go overboard with publications. We do have 3, and I think they're all very good. I'll talk about 2 right now and 1 in a moment. We have, on the left here, we have the Cleanup Progress Report that comes out every year. It highlights all of our completed work and all of our work underway that happened each fiscal year. And then the Public Involvement Plan comes out every 3 years. And that is an update of how you can stay engaged, at what stage in the process you can provide comments on projects. It's circular related, but it tells people how to be involved, how to let your voice be known, when to look for things, where to look for things, who to contact, and it's a great resource to have. Both of them are on our website and on our news archive page. So internal audiences are kind of the forgotten audience. A lot of people don't necessarily think about them, but we do a lot of work with employees. They're crucial to our success, and they're crucial to the culture. And so we really try to keep them informed of what's happening. We do that through a lot of ways. We have regular, we call them all hands meetings, where all the employees are in one room. We're able to get updates from other divisions, have cross-divisional communication. We get to hear what each division is working on, what our vision for the future is, what are our priorities, what we should be mindful of, and just maintain that focus. We have a 10-year strategic plan, which I'll talk to. That's our 3rd document that I'll talk about in a moment. We have regular messaging from our management, partnering meetings, and integrated project teams. So this is the 10-year strategic plan. I think all of you received this in your packets when you became members. And if you were to read one document to understand the EM program, this will be it. It's got everything you need about an overview of all the sites, what we're trying to do in the next 10 years. It runs 2014 to 2024, so it's not actually 10 years now, but it helps employees understand what our goals are, and so we can all kind of row in the same direction. Everybody knows what they're working towards. It keeps us very focused. And we have the goals laid out, which I think are great if you want to look through that. And it just provides clear expectations for our workforce, and it's been extremely valuable, and we use it to hand out when we travel to different sites or travel to headquarters. If you need to know information, it's a great one source for everything. That's also on our website. So I talked a lot about the mechanism. Now I want to talk about the messages. While we use all these mechanisms, what are we wanting to share? We have about 4 really big messages. Number 1, the way I started the presentation, Oak Ridge is an investment-worthy site. We want people to know that we're a site that gets work done, that we're responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars, that when we set goals, we achieve them, and we just want to share the work of our employees. All that goes into being an investment-worthy site. Vision 2020 is within reach. That's a really ambitious goal, but we're coming up on it, and that vision for you, those of you who aren't aware, Vision 2020 is to achieve most of our cleanup at ETTP, all the major cleanup by summer 2020. So we're very close to that, not only cleaning it, but making it reusable for the community as both for economic development, historic preservation, and conservation. So really having a resource for the community, and that really shows our value and impact that EM is bringing Oak Ridge for that site. Preparation is underway for large-scale cleanup at ORNL and Y12. That has a lot to do with the Excess Contaminated Facilities Initiative. We already have work underway that's achieving meaningful risk reduction right now, and that's laying the groundwork for, as we wrap up work at ETTP, we can smoothly transition into work at Y12 and ORNL. And the video I'm going to show you in a moment really focuses on that. And lastly, we're making great progress, great cleanup progress and momentum, and so we believe to be able to continue doing that, our strategy is to have additional on-site disposal capacity. So what we try to keep in mind when we're doing this messaging, when we do stories, when we do videos, What's the way to go about it? What's the principles behind our messages? And so number one, keep messages simple, relatable, and meaningful. And that can be hard in government, to be simple and to be short and be concise. If people don't understand what they're reading or what they're viewing, they're not going to understand our impact. They're not going to understand our value. And so it doesn't do any good if we're long-winded, if people aren't getting anything out of it. Number two, emphasize the impact of the project. Make it real to the audience, basically. Number three, be timely and focus on current efforts and accomplishments. We don't want to bask in our past accomplishments or talk too far in the future. So as an example, in 2016, we completely removed all of the gaseous diffusion uranium enrichment buildings. We're the first place in the world to do that. And while that was huge, we celebrated the moment, but then it was time to move on instead of constantly saying, we're the first place in the world to do that. Then it was on to Vision 2020. We set an ambitious goal, we achieved it, but that doesn't do anything for people now and for our ultimate mission. So it's on to bigger and better things. We're on to the next project. And sometimes we can be guilty of maybe talking too far in the future of, we're going to have this done in 2024 or this or this. So we really want people to know, hey, we're working day to day on these important projects. This is the progress we're making right now, today. And this is how it feeds into the ultimate vision and where we want to be. And that goes into number four, connecting the dots, connecting how each project is advancing our cleanup. So instead of just, we took down the Tosca incinerator and you should be impressed with us, it's, we took down the Tosca incinerator, and that moves us closer to Vision 2020, and that allows demo crews, since we finished 3 months early there, to go to Poplar Creek to take that facility down faster. And so really connecting the dots of this just isn't one blip, and make it meaningful to people. And with that, I've got a preview of one of our videos just to give you a sample of what we try to accomplish, of being informative, but also being concise and sharing the progress we're making and hopefully making you proud of the work we're doing. And then after the video, I'll come back up if you have any questions. It's about 3.5 minutes.
2 reports were issued in 2015 alerting lawmakers about a growing concern at DOE sites nationwide. The topic: excess contaminated facilities and the risks they pose to present-day missions. Today, the Y-12 National Security Complex and Oak Ridge National Laboratory are known for their global impact in national security and scientific research. However, what may go unnoticed are more than 200 excess contaminated facilities at those sites that can threaten those activities. These facilities do not serve current-day missions, and many have been vacant for decades. They have fallen into disrepair and pose a wide range of structural, chemical, and nuclear hazards.
As you can see from the facility behind me, which is the biology complex that operated here at Y-12 up until their 70s, they're in pretty bad shape. So what we want to do is get rid of these hazards in these buildings. It'll be an opportunity for programs to come in behind to build new facilities here and grow their programs.
The reports to Congress noted that DOE did not have near-term plans to deactivate or demolish many of these facilities due to limited funding and competing cleanup priorities. They went on to highlight Oak Ridge as the site with the most higher-risk excess contaminated facilities, with nearly a quarter of all the department's total inventory. Congress responded by providing additional funding to begin addressing these facilities in fiscal year 2016. This funding has allowed Oak Ridge's environmental management program to begin risk reduction and demolition projects years ahead of schedule.
One of our guiding principles in Oak Ridge is that we remain investment worthy. To that end, over the past several years, we have made quite a bit of progress. We deliver more than $1 worth of work for every federal dollar we get. That gives Congress the confidence in Oak Ridge and the justification to continue to fund us so that we can continue to make great progress at these sites and continue to make these sites available for future missions.
Since the funding for this initiative began, Oak Ridge's environmental management program has already improved safety at Y-12 and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and more projects are on the horizon. So far, funds have helped repair a roof to prevent structural deterioration at one of the largest remaining buildings, prevented thousands of pounds of mercury from entering the environment, removed asbestos, protected against the spread of contamination in high-density work areas, and demolished 2 higher-risk facilities.
We're thankful that Congress has given us this funding. We certainly get a lot of support out of our appropriators and this administration. We've been able to make great progress due to the funding they have given us. We continue to look forward to get additional funding so that we can continue to make progress into the future and reduce risks at these 2 sites, and then allow these 2 sites to come in behind us and grow their missions.
So with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Ben? Richard?
Yes, on the program plan.
Yes, sir.
The 10-year plan, and we're like 4 years into it, but in the small print it says biannual update. So what goes into the update?
That's a good question. I forgot to mention that's updated every 2 years. So we have 8 goals that we've set aside for ourselves. 4 are kind of programmatic goals of things we want to achieve, and 4 are internal of like safety records and that kind of thing we want to do. That's more employee-based. So the first 4 goals, every 2 years we say what progress we've made on all of those, and they have subcomponents of objectives and performance measurements under each of the 4 goals. And so if you look at it, like goal 1 would be complete cleanup at East Tennessee Technology Park, and subcomponents would be take down all the gaseous diffusion uranium enrichment buildings or transfer the land. And so every 2 years we update what we've done. The beginning of the book remains the same, but the goals change, and we let people know how far we've made it into each goal and how we are on meeting our objectives.
So when, what was it, 2 years ago when Congress increased the funding for the cleanup for the buildings, how does that get reflected in here? How does that change? I mean, what happens if the mission changes or kind of diverges?
We have a lot to add in the newest update. We'll do that next year, and we'll really add a lot more meat about, because we talk about beginning preliminary work at Y-12 and the existing one, and then as money came in and they told us what to do with the money, we're going to have to adjust and say things we've done, but it'll fit in the existing goals, but we'll add a lot of meat to it based on what we're able to achieve through Excess Contaminated Facilities Initiative.
So really, it's I guess never more than 2 years out of date.
Correct, yes, sir.
Kind of stale.
Yeah.
Not out of date.
There's overviews, and the first half is really overviews of this is the East Tennessee Technology Park and ORL and Y-12, how many employees they have, what EM's mission at each of the sites are, and then the second half really gets into here's our goals and here's how far we are into them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Hey, a couple things. To what extent does DOE or EPA agree or disagree with the risk approach to doing the work? Meaning that you select some, like, I don't know, you selected a piece of the Alpha 4 and did some work there. When you do this risk reduction, mm-hmm. Is it done with some sort of regulatory approval, or does it get into this big circular issue before we get to it?
You'd have to ask Connie. I don't know the back end of it.
But you in essence do the messaging, so it's coming from somewhere, right?
You want me to try to answer that?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm sorry.
What I tried to do, what we have tried to do is the circular planning process for priorities in the cleanup is done on a 3-year basis. That's reflected in Appendix E. Unfortunately, DOE may not be able to plan as much as we would like because it's based on what their funding guidance says. So we may not be able to get as much cleanup in the their plan, as we would like. In terms of what's being done at Y12, that was plus-up money that Congress gave them, and that did get rolled into our 3-year budget, 3-year plan goal for cleanup. This is where we're trying to have a little bit more input into the request maybe that's made by DOE and what they may need in terms of the priorities for cleanup and those hazards regarding excess buildings. But we understand we do not want those buildings to get as bad as K25 that happened in the past. And so we appreciate what DOE is doing in terms of addressing the contamination. But you ask about CERCLA. We want to be more involved when the plus-up money is requested to make sure they get assigned to those projects that we feel are important as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks a lot.
Good job.
The public comment period is now open. Are there any members of the public who would want to comment?
Thanks.
As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or by visiting our website.
Thank you, Jesseline. This concludes the public portion of our meeting. If you're a member of the public and you'd like to leave, you're welcome to do so. You're also welcome to stay. At this time, I'd like to call for any additions to the agenda for today. Are there any additions? At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All those in favor? Right hand. The motion is approved. And we'll transition at this point to motions. Richard, you have the floor.
The meeting minutes from last month, I've looked at them. I think they represent what we talked about. Does anybody have any comments or additions or on the minutes? Then I would ask for a motion to approve. And a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. And then there's, absences. I did speak with Denny, and her schedule this year is going to be just as busy as last year, and she's not going to be able. Don't think she can attend enough meetings, and she's asked to withdraw so you can fill her position. And then I did get hold of Ed and browbeated him this afternoon, and you'll see he's right over here. So.
And at this time, Belinda will share a recommendation from the chair's meeting on community involvement.
Okay, so a little bit of background. As Ben mentioned, there are a bunch of sites like ours across the country, not too many, thank goodness, but the 8 major sites have advisory boards like this one, And the chairs and the vice chairs of all of those advisory boards are de facto members then of what's called the chairs group, which is then a national organization. Twice a year, that group gets together to talk about issues that are germane to pretty much the sites throughout the country. And it's very useful to go to those and get some information about what is going on across the complex. We hosted one of those here a couple of years ago, which was great because then a lot more of our current members could participate in that and sit in as members of the public. So if you get an opportunity and those chairs meetings are close at hand, certainly recommend attending if you have that opportunity. Anyway, one of the things that we do during those meetings is that we, as I said, talk about things that are germane to the complex as a whole, and the chairs come up with recommendations which are then submitted directly to DOE headquarters, whereas our local advisory board, our recommendations to go to our local EM office, the chairs get the opportunity to direct recommendations to DOE headquarters. And one of the recommendations that was put forward in the meeting that we recently had was relating to a stakeholder and public engagement. And this is kind of interesting that it came up now. And I warned Ben as I came in that we were going to be talking about this because, I didn't want him to be offended that he would think that Dennis and I, who were chair and vice chair at the time, would have a recommendation saying that DOE needed to do more stakeholder engagement. But as it turned out, when Dennis and I had the conversation at the chairs meeting, and because this recommendation was put forward by the Nevada board, that other sites are not as well advanced in their efforts towards stakeholder and public engagement as we are here in Oak Ridge. So we thank Ben very much for that because he's made great strides here. And so a recommendation was put forward that the EM advisory board chairs would like to send up to DOE that gives a recommendation regarding different types of activities that could be engaged in by EM and the local sites and the advisory boards that would help with respect to stakeholder engagement. So the copy of this was put in everyone's packets. I hope you had an opportunity to read it. But basically what it is, it's just a potential suite of activities that could be implemented at different levels at the different sites. And so the recommendation is, has a little bit of a background, and then there's a bullet list of different types of activities that could go on. For example, preparing handouts with sites information, developing virtual reality tours, educational outreach, and coordinating with school districts and college departments that teach environmental science, and developing displays that could be used in public forums. So the recommendation is that the chairs recommend that the individual site managers and designees and their advisory boards work together to discuss and determine which activities best suit their circumstances and respond to public needs. The detail, depth, and implementation plan should result from a collaborative effort. So when the chairs come together and they put these recommendations, they have to come back out to our local advisory boards to be approved, but you don't get the opportunity to comment or change this. It's basically a straight up and down vote. You either say, yes, we think this is a good thing, we'll send it forward, or no, we don't want to do it. So I would like to recommend that we approve this to go forward because this really helps out some of the other advisory boards and the other sites around the country. So I would like to propose a motion that we approve this recommendation. Leon seconded. So I'd like to take a show of hands for those. Oh, John has a question. Yes, sir.
What would you say in terms of how much of that are we already doing in Oak Ridge versus how much of that could be additional doing here?
We're doing a lot of this here. Obviously, there's additional outreach that could be looked at, but for example, we have our student members on the board, so we have outreach into school districts. We don't necessarily do displays, but we do have the various museums in the area that we have at the old Oak Ridge Museum. We used to have a display there, and so we do have outreach into that type of informational libraries, etc. And then of course we have here we have an information repository as well, which is a virtual library, I guess. So I would say that we are a lot further along with this than some of the sites are. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. Should this group be actively working with Ben to implement some of these other items on here that we may not be doing, or are they not suitable for us?
Well, Ben has a copy of this, and he can take a look at it. And if there's something he wants to work with us on, or something that you want to work with him on, I'm sure he'd be open to that. So,
But it is the role of the board, right, to take on some of these items ourselves.
Yes and no. We can take on whatever we want.
Whatever is written here.
These are just These are just options. These aren't necessarily you should do every single one of these. These are just, as I said, they are potential activities that could be done
So we should determine
with collaboration.
Which ones are appropriate and work with our federal counterparts to take those on.
Yes. Yeah. This is intended for collaboration.
And if we have alternative ideas, we can certainly propose those as well.
Yes.
So,
yeah. So basically, it's kind of get the ball rolling.
So, Linda, will we get a reply from DOE on this then?
This will come to the chairs, and then it will come back to us, yes. And Connie, did you want to say something?
Well, I just want to say something after the board members had completed that, but this EM board basically supports the EM program in terms of cleanup. And so the circular community engagement, public involvement opportunities is what EPA would use, and DOE as the lead agency would be following some of those. So the current public involvement plan has some links to our guidance documents, and understanding that this is the board which represents the community, but it is not the community. And I know that DOE has a lot of activities, a lot of venues out there, but not everybody is connected to the web. And understand that you had the display at the Science Museum. So I welcome whatever assistance you all choose to do to broaden and enhance DOE's outreach efforts to the community.
And thank you, Connie. And that was one of the purposes of our redeveloping a slideshow that any of our board members could use to go out to additional civic organizations and present information to those organizations about the board and the activities, and by de facto then what DOE is up to and how we interact with DOE. Anyone else have any other comments or suggestions? Not that we can change this. We can just do what we want to do separately.
Do you want to do a vote?
Okay, yes, I'd like to go ahead and do a vote. Everyone in favor of putting this forward to the chairs to go forward to DOE? You raise your right hand. And I think we have to have a full count on this one, Shelley. But it looks like we're unanimous, so we're good.
Unanimous.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Melissa, do you have any responses to recommendations?
We have y'all sent two recommendations earlier the last couple months. We've already returned the one on the budget recommendation. Brian Henry's working on the recommendation for the EMDF, but because of the numerous public participation things we've been doing, he's not gotten that completed. But his plan is to have it completed in the 60-day deadline.
Wonderful. Okay, next up on the agenda, committee reports. For EM stewardship, the floor belongs to Leon Shields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick recap and summary of the September 26th EM stewardship meeting. Covered various topics as far as from the Vision 2020, but the emphasized importance was the recommendations to go to the 2024 vision. The 2020 already being a little bit of a past tense as far as the recommendations. It was suggested that we put those recommendations forward from the boards from EM to go to the 2024. A lot of discussion on the possible airport coming in to the ETTP site. Questions and answers from the board, DOE, and different facilities was where that parcel was actually going to take place. Various comments as far as utility infrastructure, support groups, what it was going to do to the community, who was going to be able to use it. Some of those things were addressed by DOE. And we had some follow-up from Ms. Shelley that sent some paperwork out and some documents to the other folks. Ms. Melissa covered the 2019 work plan and some of the proposed topics that was going to be on that for the stewardship committee. And we kind of recapped the public meetings for the disposal facility and covered some of the upcoming meetings that EPA, DOE, and different places was having hosted in the area for the local public comments to come in for that. If I can, just for a second, Madam Chair, add a personal note to this. As a new member, I've got to attend certain things on a national level to try to learn more about this board and, more importantly, learn about the Oak Ridge Reservation. And it's very impressive as being a new member to sit in some of those venues with a lot of the DOT regulators and management teams from these various reservations all across the country, and really feel like when I walk away from that the Oak Ridge Reservation is really ahead of a lot of the cleanup for those others. I was very fortunate to go to the Nevada one last month. And when you hear all these other, from Savannah River to Hanford and different ones, and I'm sure Belinda and some of the others can speak on this, when the presentations from Oak Ridge come up to the boards, and there's always questions, well, how did you guys succeed at this? How did you guys pay for that? And I feel like that Oak Ridge and this reservation is the leader in that environmental management cleanup. And unless you're outside from that national level at some of these environmental justice conferences or Radway summits, you have no idea actually what some of these folks from EPA, TDEC, or DOE is actually doing. So I commend them, hats off to you guys. And as a new 12-month member, I'm fascinated with the presentations that EPA and DOE has for Oak Ridge. Tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. I'll review our notes from the executive committee meeting, which was held last week, October 3rd. The board came together and discussed the vote on the communications recommendation, which Belinda shared earlier with everyone. We also discussed the EM Stewardship Committee report. We haven't publicly acknowledged that here as a full board, but Leon Schultz was elected as chair for the EM Stewardship Committee and Ed Trujillo as the vice chair. So welcome you guys to your new roles for that board. Other business, we discussed a cursory review of the bylaws. That's been a while since we've done that. So as an executive committee, we'll be taking a look at the bylaws to see if there's anything we would recommend relative to enhancements or improvements around those. We also discussed the annual meeting and any suggestions around a venue. So if anyone has a suggestion, please bring those forward to one of the executive committee members or to one of the staff. As mentioned earlier, we discussed member recruitment and some of the ongoing activities that are happening there. And Dennis also requested some information relative to our website traffic. That information was provided back out to the executive board last week in review. We've seen incredible growth relative to our activity, views, impressions, time folks are staying on the site. And we would be happy actually to share that information out with the board if you'd like to see that information. But big kudos to Shelley for pulling that information for us. A lot of great work went into that, so we thank you, Shelley, for that work. We also discussed the holiday gathering, if there's an interest in that as well. So if you have a thought or an idea around that, please share your opinion there. And with that, we will transition to any open discussion.